around the clock, sports all the time. That's never going to work. That's ridiculous.
Just remember to have fun out there today. And if you lose, I'll kill you.
This is Tall Can Audio.
Seriously, this thing is going to be a cultural disaster.
Away we go, a brand new edition of the Tall Can Audio Podcast. Matt Robinson coming to you from our studio in beautiful Bytown, Canada. As promised, we've been trying to get this done for a little while, but our boy's a busy man. We welcome back the not-so-new guy, Julian McKenzie. What's happening, man?
I'm doing good, man. Thanks so much for having me back. How are you doing?
I'm all right, man. It's been a minute. We had you in here not too long after your kind of snap arrival in the nation's capital. You got yanked out of Calgary fast, dropped in here. How are you settling in, man?
I think I'm settling in a little bit better.
Yeah.
I like Ottawa as a city.
Yeah.
I know every time I tell people that, like they look at me a little weird. They're like, "You like Ottawa? Like really? Like is there anything to do over there?" Like, no, it's a nice city, and every time I find like some place to hang out or go out to a bar or whatever, like I feel like. This is going to sound really weird the way I put it. Like, I'm pleasantly surprised because, yes, it has that reputation of being a little bit of a sleepy town, but there's some cool places to chill. And obviously, doing my day-to-day work covering the Sens, like, that's been a really fun time, too. And seems like we're in the midst of some exciting times with this team.
It sure looks that way. And we're going to get into that a little bit. You were able to warn us ahead of time. You're not going to partake today. You got a few things going on.
It's Lent season. You know what I'm saying? Like I you know what? I wanted to give up something.
I get
year,
that.
So I gave up alcohol for 40 days.
I think that makes sense. I always say I'm going to try and do that. Never. It's almost always like coming out of New Year's, then I'm like, oh, but the World Juniors are still on for a week or so, and like so I've tried to maybe follow my sister's lead. She chooses February; it's the shortest month to give up alcohol.
Yeah, like people do like dry January and stuff. That's cool, but I just thought it'd be cool just to try it out and see if it would work.
I am under no such limitations at this point, so I am going to have one. I hope you won't judge me too harshly for it.
Go off, sir.
So this one is from the Broadhead Brewing Company. This is one. Julian, I'll tell you the story, man. This is called the Donut Stout. It's got a little pastry feel to it. I've had this one before. Unfortunately, it comes in at about 9% alcohol. Now, I know
what do you mean, unfortunately?
Well, you have some experience, I know, hosting podcasts that from time to time can veer off into weird tangents and strange places. So if we end up in a speed wobble here, I trust that you can grab the wheel and land the show.
Whoa,
if need
is that
be.
Is that what we got going on here? Like, unfortunately, like, am I gonna have to pilot this show? Like, I
know you can do it.
Are you basically telling me like if you get drunk on this show, like
it's happened before?
What? You mean it's happened before? What is going on?
Just crash land, hand the wheel to the guest, and let them bring it home safely. So I have full faith that you can do that. Now,
it's a wild time to be asking for crash landings.
I'd like to think that on a Wednesday afternoon at 2:00, one beer is not going to put us in that
that's what I figured. Like, if you had like 5 of them, then I'd be like, I'm a little concerned.
Well, and this is the story I was going to tell you, man. I went out before Christmas with, you've probably met at this point, maybe not. I shouldn't be too over the top on that. Michaela Schreider hosts She's Got Game on the TSN radio network.
I have not met them yet. I think we may follow each other on Instagram, but I have not met them yet. I would like to. That'd be cool. I still would like to get to know a whole bunch of people in this market. So yeah.
You should. She's awesome. Her co-host Vanessa is awesome. But I was out with her and her husband Josh just before Christmas. And we sat down at the Broadhead Brewery, and I ordered one of these, and it was awesome. And I didn't know much about it. I just knew it was their donut pastry stout. I'm a big stout guy, both in build and in beer taste. And I was like, I'm just going to post up right here. And that was the one I had for the rest of the night. Couple over and over and over. And I stood up to leave. I'm like, whoa. Had no idea it was 9%.
Kind of creeps up on you, right?
Yeah, I didn't even know going into it that it was 9%. And so by the time I'm wobbling out the door, I knew. But
that's what you're saying, unfortunately. Unfortunately.
That's right.
Here, unfortunately, it's 9%. I was like, well, you want it more? Like, what is going on?
I do not need more.
Jeez.
No, that's... I was talking to you a little bit before we fired up the microphones that, you've been here for a few months now. You've sort of settled into town. What did you fill your off? I don't know how many off work hours you've actually had this winter, but
good point, yeah.
Did you get down to the market? Did you get down to check out the canal? Like, what have you kind of been immersing yourself in your new hometown here?
I think what's cool about this city is I have a couple friends who I've made from like my high school days, like growing up in Montreal, who live out here, and I've been able to reconnect with them and hang out with them from time to time, and yeah, just through work and getting to know the media market here, guys like Graham Nichols, and obviously catching up with my former athletic colleague Ian Mendez and Brent Wallace and stuff. And there's been a lot of really cool people here. I like the city. I like the media market and getting to know people, obviously, like Claire Hanna and Kyle Bukauskas, Bruce Garriock. Like there's some cool people here. So yeah, I realize I haven't given myself too much time off just because of the way the schedule works and some other stuff I've got going on. Like it's I've been working hard, but like I'll say this, like I think when the Four Nations tournament came up, while I did have a little bit of FOMO, like not actually like covering it, it was actually really good for me to take that time off and just like unplug and go off grid and like just just go back home and like chill with fam and friends and stuff, and obviously having that opportunity to do that too, that's also been really, really helpful. Like being 2 hours away from home, being able to do that and reconnect with everyone over there, that's been really, really great. But I still keep tabs on what goes on in Calgary and all my friends who are over there and the family I have over there too. Like I get to talk to them every now and again. Like it's, I miss the people out there, but I'm really happy that I'm here and I'm taking in the experience here. It's been really chill. But yeah, Ballard Market for sure. Been there a couple times, particularly when the World Juniors were going on. Oh yeah, and like some of the different reporters from out of town were coming out. Like, what's the name? Was it the Tavern? What's the name of that really awesome? Like it's like the oldest bar in Ottawa. Is it called the Tavern? I don't remember what it's called.
There's a couple taverns around. There's the Lafayette House.
Lafayette House.
Okay,
Lafayette. That's the spot. We hung out there a couple of times. Yeah. That's actually a really cool spot.
I can tell you, our friend of the show, again, I don't know who you've met, AJ Jackiebeck.
Yeah. AJ's cool.
That's one of his haunts. He likes the Lafayette.
I get that. A lot of people seem to hang out at Lafayette. But yeah, no, Ottawa's got some cool uncut gems. Also,
there you go.
It's cool. Like they got cool spots you could just hang out. Again, I think it's like a surprise because you look at Ottawa and it's like this like kind of quiet town, but like when you go hang out anywhere, like it's a cool spot. Or the Royal Oak, for example. I know there's a bunch of them around.
Love the Royal Oak,
but like the Royal Oak's it's a nice spot. There's some cool spots to hang out.
They got this pan-seared fish in there that I love that goes nice with any number of different pints. So the Royal Oak is great. Been there a bunch of times. I'm curious, having done serious time around the Habs and then the Flames and now here, is there anything that stands out to you in terms of the hockey fan or the hockey experience, having been, the Habs is the original six, kind of has the history, has everything to it. The Flames, a little bit old, or newer than the Habs, certainly, but has that Western Canadian feel to it, and that type of fan now being back here in Ottawa. I say this with sort of respect. It has this little brother thing. It's stuck, and I don't mean that to be demeaning, but you're stuck between these two monsters, right? The Leafs and the Habs on either side of it. So there's this fan base that has, we're going to throw some elbows here a little bit to defend our own sovereignty and our own territory, and as they build things up. As you've sort of spent time around these three markets, are there noticeable differences in the fans, or once the game starts, is it all just...
Yeah, there's definitely there's differences. Like, comparing Montreal to anybody else, like, it's so different in terms of how knowledgeable the fans are, how they communicate in English and French, but also how widespread they are. Like, I've seen it in Calgary when the Canadians go. I've seen it here when the Canadians are in town. Like, they come out in droves and they take over. Just, it's a bit similar to what happens with the Toronto Maple Leafs, obviously.
We're everywhere.
But that's
annoying.
that's just what it is. Like, when you're original six franchise and you have the success that they have,
for 60, 80 years, there was no other teams in Canada. So CBC across Canada gave you two teams to choose between. It was Toronto or Montreal.
Yeah.
It takes a long time to drum that out, right?
Yeah, right. But I think the comparison is a lot closer with Calgary and Ottawa in the sense that, like, they are both little brothers to other franchises neighboring to them, whether in their province or even not too far from them because, like, imagine if you're in Calgary, yes, there is the obvious parallel to the Edmonton Oilers, but there's still a lot of people there. There are people in that market who are Vancouver Canucks fans.
Right.
Whereas we're talking tonight, there's a massive Canucks-Flames game with both of those teams competing against each other in the standings. Like that might be the biggest Flames-Canucks game in a little bit of time.
Yep.
So yeah, there's some of that too, just like here in Ottawa, where Ottawa and Toronto, there's that rivalry, and then 2 hours east of Ottawa, there's the Montreal Canadiens, right?
Yep.
Like, there's a reason why people get a little sensitive with the idea of the Senators playing in Quebec for preseason games, possibly regular season games, right? We remember that whole that was wild.
They could not have seen that coming, and yet there's a part of you that's like, how did you not see that coming? Why wouldn't that have been an issue? Right?
I think for me, it's like, I understand why fans would feel the way that they feel, knowing that there has been that threat.
That's always the city that's waved in their faces, right?
That's it, right? And whether it's legit or not, like, losing your team or thinking about your team being lost is not at all fun.
Right.
And even if someone even mentions the possibility, you're scrambling a little bit. So I sympathize a lot with Sens fans who had to go through that. And while I could understand at the finer details some of the business sense that made sense for the Senators to consider that, like, I sympathize again with those fans, but also the Spartak.
Like, I'm with you.
Not to drudge that up again, but like that's an unforced error. You don't need to. And I think there were a lot of people who, if they had just talked about the Quebec City thing as is, and it's just preseason games,
just
it kept it at that.
No jersey thing, no hints of regular season games. Yeah. No, I think I'm with you on that.
That's it. And
you and I both grew up in Original Six markets,
right?
And maybe don't have quite that. Like, I saw it and I kind of looked at it and cringed. That's not going to go over well.
I saw the when I saw the Spartak thing, I was like, that's not going to go over well.
And then I sort of moved on though. And like, even with that, I didn't expect it to go where it went, right? To get as big as it did. And so that's just a question of not, for me, being plugged in enough, or not having grown up here and having those feel. I knew it wouldn't be received well, but I did not think it would land with, having to come out and make press releases and pull back on agreements and things like that. You're right, from a business sense, it makes a lot of sense for them to want to play in other places and get that Sens brand out there.
Yeah, you want to build your brand.
That francophone, Canadian fan base that maybe didn't fully embrace the Habs after the Nordiques left. Now, that was 20 years ago. You might be a minute too late on that, but
yeah, I think I'm a 94 baby, so I just missed them. Yeah.
But just in general, like, even for the Sens, like, if that was the plan, why wait quite this long to do it? But
new ownership, right?
Yeah,
and I get, like, Michael Landauer, like,
focus on Gatineau, focus on
and I know the Sens have said that they have that focus there too, and I think they could maybe still stand to do a little bit more in terms of reaching out and appealing to that community and appealing more to Francophones for games. I think they have made strides, and I think they could stand to do a little more. But yeah, I also understand the thinking with going to Quebec City, a market where you have so many people from around there who did not latch on to the Canadians or would probably never do that. So yeah, you want to try to, influence them and change their minds. And I mean, we were talking about it a little bit earlier where, like, you have fans who grow up in these markets where their team's not that good.
Yes.
And when you're kids and you're young and influenceable, you can look around and be like, oh, well, this team's good. Like, why don't I become a fan of this team? And then you end up kind of locked in that fandom.
Sure.
And considering where the Senators are at right now, like,
right, and
this could be a good time to try to tap into that market.
That's a great point,
right?
Man. They're on the up and come, right? They're swinging upwards. I mentioned to you, like, I have a cousin who is 10 years younger than me, and so in 06, 07, 08, coming out of that first full season lockout, we're starting to see YouTube and NHL Center Ice, and the Leafs are terrible, right? Our family has historically been Leaf fans growing up in that area, and my cousin's like, man, I can watch Ovechkin highlights whenever I want, or I can see what Crosby and Malkin are doing, or a few years later, it's Chicago, it's Taves and Kane. So you can lose fans quick now because they don't have to be married to the home team. And so this might be a moment for the Sens. Like, the Habs are clearly coming, but they're not there yet. Like, maybe this is a moment for the Sens to step into Quebec and try and grab quickly, hey, look what we're doing. Like, we got this. We're right there now. We're in this battle. Like, maybe it is that moment to capitalize.
But they probably just need to tweak their approach a little bit and also ensure that they're doing everything they can to ensure that their fans are being appealed to and appeased to, and appealing to the neighboring region of Gatineau. There's a whole bunch of fans there. A lot of people would want to go out there and support this team, especially now. So,
and I think was it not just this year at training camp? Did they not have an exhibition game, like a scrimmage over there, an internal? Like they're trying to reach out to Gatineau better than they ever used to.
Yeah, and again, I'll reiterate that. I think they have made strides there, and like they've sponsored different teams out there too.
Yep.
Like I think they're definitely doing something over there.
Sure. I want to ask you, but we'll talk about the Sens, we'll talk about the playoff race, but sticking on your beat specifically, I'm kind of curious what the last week or two for somebody like you looks like, who has to keep his ear to the ground on what the Sens are doing heading up to the trade deadline, but also co-host the Chris Johnston show on the SDPN, and you've got to be available for what he might be getting ready to do. We might have to do an emergency pod on Rantanen or on a Leaf thing or on any, like, sometimes emergency calls, right? Like, I might have to be available for that right now. Like, how do you balance the two things? What does the last week or two look like for somebody like yourself trying to wear a couple of hats here?
I just try to be available as best as I can. I thought this year worked out for me in the sense that I went into this deadline with the expectation that the Senators weren't going to do much of anything. The salary cap structure was what it was. They weren't going to throw in their first round pick in a trade. Like, whatever, my expectation was that whatever they were going to do was going to be marginal. And I think with how Steve Staios talked about it too, I think they were of that mindset, and we'll get to that Friday deadline in a minute. But like, I think because of the fact that was their plan, like obviously I had to keep tabs on what was going on, but I was a little bit more worried about making sure I was available for CJ show.
Sure.
Because like on top of making sure that I'm covering the Sens, like I traveled last week. I was in Washington. I was in Chicago. So it's one thing to be home and you have your setup, and if we're in the group chat and something happens, we're like, hey, man,
Besser gets dealt or Rantanen or whatever might happen there.
It's nothing for me to just go to my computer and just like set myself up and then we're ready to go. It's a whole other thing when you're out in DC.
I'm at the Marriott in DC,
you're
hoping the Wi-Fi's good.
You're hoping and praying your Wi-Fi is doing well. And like there's been times before where like I've done podcasts in different hotels in different parts of the states or other cities, and like the Wi-Fi ain't great, and like I'm freaking out like just about how that happens. Sometimes even my own home too. Like it's just nothing annoys me more with that show. I put so much pressure on myself to do well on that show. Where anything like that just kind of like sets me off a little bit. But it worked out where when did we do that Sunday, that early show?
That was not this past Sunday. I think that was the week before.
Right. Like I think I'm trying to remember like where I was when you know what it is? I was, because in DC, one of my best friends from grad school lives out there. So I was hanging out with them, and it was actually funny. I happened to be hanging around them, and I was meeting up with their partner, and we were all just chilling, and we passed by their partner's place. And I looked at the time and I was like, oh crap, like I got to do the show in like 30 minutes. Like we got to head back to your apartment. And like they let me hang out in their apartment. They have their whole room like set up. They have like a whole screen and everything. And I didn't get to use your screen, but I just set myself up and they just let me do my thing for like an hour. Like that was like I shout out Jason for letting me use their bedroom to record. But like it worked out that way where like, you know, my internet setup was good. I was able to do the show. And it was on a Sunday, so like I didn't have to worry about like going to the rink the next day and like waking up super early doing the show and then going to do the podcast. Like it worked out well. And then I did the next show in like Chicago. I thought we would have done more emergency shows. But it worked out well where there wasn't that much going on my end.
No, like there was kind of this also like quick bang, bang, bang of trades and then this long break. And then again, like Thursday night before trade deadline, there was a couple more Brock Nelson. And
that's it. And then by then, like when you're really in the thick of it, like CJ's doing his own work and he's doing TSN. So at that point, the next time you're thinking of doing a podcast is after. So the Saturday. So that like when we got to that, like that was, I don't know. It went as, knock on wood, I mean, that went as well as it probably could have. Like my Wi-Fi situation wasn't bad, and Washington and Chicago, and then being able to come back home and do the extra shows after, it worked out real well. And obviously CJ's really good at what he does, and we're talking about the Marner thing. Like, this was as good of a time with that show, but that's essentially what it looks like. You're basically just like checking your phone every couple of minutes, being like, did something happen? Like, there'd be times like I'm trying not to check my phone, and like the CJ show group chat is like going off on other stuff that's going on.
Check it now.
And I'm like I kind of just want to see the Bean in Chicago. Like, I want to just like enjoy this art museum and see what's going on. But the Sens decided to do all their work on the Friday,
right? And
I happened to be home for that, so it worked out.
Now, you seem like a guy, well, you've just described some of it. Like, I don't travel as much as you do, but like I'll go and, like you said, if I'm visiting my parents and I'm hanging out in the basement, I've had like my nephew come halfway down the stairs and he sees I'm yapping into a microphone like this and no one else in the room, and he goes back and he's like, Uncle Matt's talking to himself. Like, you're like, yeah, he kind of is, sort of. Like, it would appear that way to you if you're 5 years old or whatever. Like, do you have, like, if you're recording like that at a friend's place, like you described in DC, is there at all, like, do you still get that way at all, like a little self-conscious about, like, can everybody leave the room? Like, otherwise you're watching me talk to no one, right? Like, you are talking to someone, but it doesn't look that way.
It's less like that. It shows itself in different ways, maybe. Like, I know when I recorded in my friend's room, I forgot what I had said. I had said something. I think, you know what? I think I had shouted out somebody. I might have shouted out. I think it was when I shouted out Puckpedia on the podcast, and in like my friend and his partner are in the other room, and they heard me like say that, and I hear them like giggling on the other side, like, like, come on guys, like, I'm doing the show. But it doesn't typically happen. Like, when I go home, like I used to live like upstairs from my parents in a duplex unit. And like that unit's still essentially like almost like I never left.
Right.
So like I could just go back into my room and like go in the office, and like everyone else just understands, like, all right, like I'm doing my thing in the room, like talking or whatever. I remember like back in the day, when I like lived there proper, and my sister and I, we lived together, and my sister's room is like right next to that office space. So she would get really pissed at me when like I'd be up at like 8 o'clock in the morning, sometimes earlier, and I'm doing a podcast, and she's like waking up here to be talking to CJ, and she's like, "Jeez, man, like, really, you gotta do this now?"
Last night, leave me alone.
Like, not even that. Just like, she's not even like that type of person. It's just like you wake up at like 7:30, 8 a.m. and you hear me like asking CJ questions about who's gonna get traded. Like, I get it. Like, there is that element of, you know, like, I wish sometimes like people would just kind of like make sure that I'm just kind of doing my thing on my own. Like, I'm in this kind of isolated space, but mostly everyone's been pretty nice about it.
I'll try and disappear for a week or two, maybe a little more, over the summer down to the family cottage, and there's a bedroom upstairs, and it's not air conditioned up there. It's 1,000 degrees.
Oh my God.
And so you also have to turn off the fan because you don't want the extra noise and the whatever. And like everyone else is outside hanging out at the lake, it's no problem. But my nephew, he'll come in to pee, same little guy, and it used to be my niece when she was a little younger, and she'd hear somebody talking upstairs. So you're going to come up and you start knocking on the door, and you're like, hello. You're just like, this is not the moment for entertaining, but it's fun, right? And as the show has grown and like you become less obsessed with perfection, you're just like, whatever, I just lean into it now. Like, sometimes if nobody else is hanging out, I'll just take the mic down to the lake, set that up as my backdrop, and if boats are whizzing by in the background or whatever, who cares, right?
You worry less about perfection. I feel like I don't know. I feel like with that show, this is just me, and this is just me putting.
Oh, you're doing
pressure.
A far more professional thing, though.
Sure, but to your point, like CJ will be like, "Nah, man, like we're just doing the show."
Well, the last one, he's in Mexico, right?
Right, but that happens. We go into different shows, with different spots to record the show.
Yeah,
but like I put so much pressure on myself to do well on that show. Even though I'm not like the star, like CJ is the guy, but I want to make sure CJ looks good.
Sure.
So like I definitely like, you know, I get it. There's gonna be moments I'm gonna be different spots. I'm not gonna be in my spot
for me,
to do it.
Totally depends. Like if I'm having, you know, I don't want to be an asshole, but like we've had Bob McKenzie on the show. I'm gonna make sure that sounds good. If it's just a weekly thing with my regular co-host and I happen to be at the cottage and everyone knows it, then I'm just gonna lean into it. Leave that open in the background. You'll hear the the boats going by, whatever might be happening. If somebody wanders into the shot in the background or whatever, this isn't a video show, but my co-host will laugh if they see him in the background. Little things like that, you just become less worried about it, and you're just like, that's the price of doing.
For me, it's less like what pops up in my background. It's more just like, is my setup just like actually working? But CJ for sure, like I know there was like one time he was in Florida. I don't know if it was for like a general manager's meeting or like an owner's meeting, and like he was outside, hot Florida sun, like wearing this suit. This dude's like drenched in like and like people out, like all of his colleagues are like walking outside. They see him like doing this like show with like a phone and a tripod. They're just taking photos of him, just like look at this guy's doing his podcast. Like that's a guy who. Like, I'm sure I could go through all the different, like, places I've recorded the podcast. Like, that guy could go band for band with anybody with the different backdrops that he's had. He was at the World Championships last year, and he, like, went up to, like, one of the podiums and, like hung out there and just, like, did a show. Like, you'll find a way to make it work. I'm more just, like, I just want to make sure the show goes off well. I want to make sure that, like, I know what I'm talking about, so that way when I throw it to Siege, like, Siege can just knock bombs out of the park.
I hear you. But that's not what we do here. A little more,
but for shows like this, like where I could just be chill, and within reason, obviously, like don't go off hand.
No, I'm with you.
But like with shows like this, like
we'll just hang out by the lake sometimes. Yeah,
you can relax, you can just chill, you can just talk about whatever. Like I like stuff like this where you could just be. I know I can be myself. On a podcast. So I appreciate shows like this, but definitely, I think I carry. And look, I have fun. On CJ show, we have fun almost all the time.
That comes across, right?
But like, I definitely have my moments where I'm like, oh crap, like, especially if a show's like really serious. So it's like, I got to be on because like this for me, like this is the show. I get 32 Thoughts exists and people listen to 32 Thoughts, but like I hold CJ show in high regard,
of course.
And I know there are a lot of people who hold us in high enough regard where they want to know what's up, they want to know what CJ knows, and I got to be on.
100%.
100%ers. As we call our fans.
Hey, that's right. And I'm one, man. I don't know that I've ever missed a show.
I appreciate it. Thank you,
I wouldn't swear to it, but I'm pretty sure I've never missed it.
Hey, Ryan, look, there's still time. The beauty of being a 100%er, you can always decide to become a 100%er whenever you decide. If you are at the lake and you have one of those donut stouts and you just have a couple hours to kill, you could just like binge
the problem
through
is
a bunch
when
of
I'm
episodes.
at the lake, you guys often aren't doing a whole lot either. In July and August, most of the hockey pods, they don't
but like
totally
you can catch up.
dry
You can catch up to like some episodes.
That's right. Go
in
back,
like May, June, and then work your way to the end.
Yeah, and you guys do a couple of drop-ins, throughout the summer, which are always kind of fun. A little off-topic, right? A little. Has CJ actually ever seen a movie in his lifetime?
Man, look, that's just that dedication from CJ, man. He just decides, you know what, man, I'm going to dedicate myself to the sport, and I'm never going to watch a movie in my life.
This will be maybe just a little inside thing for those of us, the current listener who also listens to your show. You got to go to Coburg. You got to meet CJ Papa.
Yes.
What was visiting Chris Johnston's hometown like? That had to be a lot of fun, man.
It was so cool, man. Like, I get that he doesn't really hang out there, but it was just cool to see like the hometown where
local
he's from.
Boy comes home, has done good, right?
The neighborhood where he grew up in. The coolest thing about that night was like, I mean, just meeting his dad was really special and really awesome.
Well, he's become a bit of a meme on your show. Like, he's a real person, but he's also
I learned when I was in Coburg that Coburg Papa, the nickname we gave him, I thought for the longest time that was just something we came up with for the show. But like his family, like they call, like that's a name that's been around for generations. Like he's been Coburg Papa from time. He amazing human being, absolutely just amazing. Like when we got to the Boston Pizza to do the show, Boston Pizza, we didn't ask them to do this. They built like a whole section where Coburg Papa and like his family could just like hang out. Like they decked out this table, they had all these decorations and like
Coburg Papa VIP section.
Yeah, it was literally a Coburg Papa VIP section, and he's like right next to the stage. And to have all those fans come out and watch us at the Boston Pizza, like that was really special. And that was really cool to be a part of that. There was like a family that was there. They were hanging out in Toronto, I think, for the holidays, and they're from New Zealand. and they heard we were doing the show, and they drove from Toronto to Coburg to see us. Like that was
That's wild.
That was insane. Yeah. There was like another guy who came up to us, and he had this poster board with like our photos on it, and he scratched out the Chris Johnston show and said CJ's for cute journalist. Apparently, like that was like a whole joke from the SDP, and it just made its way there. So it was really cool to see the fans respond the way that they did to our show and the way that we had fun in Coburg. I know it wasn't the first time we've done a live show, but like that was cool to go to a town like that and have all those fans like show support the way that they did. I hope we get to go back next year, because I would do the drive. I'd make my way to Coburg and hang out and talk to fans again and do make it. I'd love to make it a yearly thing if we can do it.
That was a lot of fun to listen to, even, right? Like,
I'm glad. I got a lot of feedback from that episode. I'm really glad about it, because I remember when we did the live show in Toronto the year before. Like, I think I focused too much on trying to make it informative and not as fun.
Right.
So we tried to make it as
embrace
as fun
the
as
fact there's a crowd here. Let's lean into it a little bit.
Yeah.
Right?
So I'm glad we made that episode fun.
And I'm one of those guys who, like you and I are sitting here right now. In theory, if it was all you could have given me was to say, I'm a little busy this week, could we just do something on Zoom? Like, I will take it, but I do believe these in person, when you have the chance to do it, they come off more natural. Right?
You do it. Like, that's why whenever we can, CJ
you
and
guys
I,
have done it in the SDPN.
Yeah, whenever we can, we try to do it, because like there's nothing like picking up on visual cues and other stuff in person and having fun with them. No matter
how good your connection is, there's always a little bit of a lag if you're on Zoom or whatever platform you're using.
That's
right?
it, right? And what I admire is that like I don't know if people realize this. Like when CJ and I like started the podcast, like we didn't really know each other,
right?
Like at all. Like I obviously like I followed him and like I knew of him as a journalist, but like we had never like we recorded a demo before like months before the show even started, and that was like the first time we had ever interacted. And then from there we built a friendship and just kind of connected off of that. Like for us to kind of build a friendship and a relationship purely off of like
the
podcast and being on Zoom and trying to just establish a rapport from that, like
that's got to be one of your summer releases. We got to hear the demo. The awkward pauses at the beginning while you're feeling each other out.
You know what? Like I don't, from what I remember, and maybe I need to re-listen to it, I don't remember the demo being that awkward.
Okay,
I don't think it was like that.
Good on you guys then.
I don't know. Like I don't remember. I've just tried to play it as neutral as I could, and I don't think there was a lot of like horsing around or like the natural stuff that's kind of
comes later.
That comes later. But like I think just like being informative and just playing it straight the whole time like helped us out. But like maybe one day if we find it somewhere they could just have it out for everybody. But like that was legit like the first time I'd ever really like spoken to CJ, and like the fact that we had to do it over a demo was really, really surreal. And I'm glad that over 320 episodes later we're still doing this.
No, it's coming off really well.
Thank you.
You guys quite a while ago found your stride together, right?
I think so. I think this season this is the most connected I've ever felt to Siege.
Right. We should probably talk about what the Sens actually did and a couple other teams at the deadline.
We could.
I want to ask you if you're surprised at all, and as you know, and as we've mentioned here, I'm not really a Sens guy, but looking at when they brought in. Look, the big deal, obviously, was the Norris Cozens thing.
Yeah.
But I've been over the top, praising the Zetterlund deal. I thought that was a low key, under the radar, like wow, brought in this 20-goal guy, and early on here they've started him on the fourth line most of the time. Are you at all surprised about that? Is that maybe he doesn't play Travis Green's style, or is it more just getting to know him early? I thought at minimum that's a third-line guy with Pinto who can kind of be setting him up a little bit, but so far that's not been the way this has played out.
So I think I was definitely surprised because I was of the belief that he would probably play second line, to be honest. Like he had played left wing in San Jose, and you could put him on that second line with Drake Batherson and essentially Dylan Cozens.
Yep.
And what I realize now, and Travis tried to explain it where he was just trying to get him acclimated into the lineup. And I guess his way of thinking about it is like this team's already going through enough change as it is. And it's one thing for Dylan Cozens and Drake Batherson to play together off of the friendship that they've built up from the World Championship and how they've connected since. Like, Drake Batherson ahead of the deadline was on a line with David Perron and Josh Norris.
Right.
To be on a line with Zetterlund and Cozens,
too much
like,
turnover all at
I
once.
wonder about that. Was that the thinking where he's just like, you know what, like maybe that's a little too much change, but also at the same time I thought about that being a line because that would be a way to preserve all these other lines, right?
Yeah.
And then you put him on the fourth line where it's kind of funny, like, sure, like being on the fourth line, you don't get a ton of minutes, but 30-something goals between him and Adam Gaudette, right? Like, there's been some offense.
There'd be punch back there, yeah.
For sure, I guess. But, like, I still think at some point Zetterlund will climb up in the depth chart, I think, for this team, just because of the offense he can provide, the strength that he has. Like, that first game he played against Detroit, he's bouncing off of everybody.
He is built like a South Park character. Like, he is a short, broad, like he's a mailbox,
and like who could like lift,
box.
he could like lift 600 something pounds.
Yeah,
like dude is like, it's like Mighty Mouse in a way.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
Dude just finds a way to just be that.
Yeah, he's
guy.
not a tall guy, but he is a stocky guy. Like he's a strong guy,
stocky guy.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's still a bit of a surprise that they made him. The Sharks had made him available in a trade, and Steve Stais was willing to.
I don't get that. I don't know.
It just seemed like it seems like whatever. I mean, like from my understanding, just with the contract stuff, like it definitely came as a surprise to his representation. But like I guess maybe just San Jose found itself in a position where they're like, you know what,
let's not lose tandem with him and Eklund though.
Yeah,
like this young little core.
And William Eklund was really down bad. He was sad about him leaving. But I think maybe San Jose's thinking was, if we're not going to be able to, if we're going to have a struggle signing this asset as an RFA in the offseason, let's at least cut our losses now. But yeah, I think that was a big surprise for everybody. But I think if he is able to get plugged in the middle six role, plays on an offensive line, I still think the second line is probably the best move, just because where you can move a guy like Perron down to a checking line.
That type of guy's fine on a third line.
Exactly. Right? Like even in that first game for Dylan Cozens, which I'm sure we'll get to, like on that tying goal coming back against the Rangers, it's Perron, Shane Pinto, and Michael Amadio playing together. Yeah. And they had time together earlier this year too.
Sure.
So it's okay if Perron plays that up and down style. He's willing to play anywhere. For a guy like Fabian Zetterlund, where you want him to be in a position where he can unlock his offensive abilities, it's best suited where you play him either on the left side on that line, or in a pinch, if for whatever reason Claude Giroux's not playing it for you, you could put him to the right of Tim Stützle with his right.
One of those games is not going well, and you shuffle your lines a little, and you could drop him up there, no problem.
That's it,
trigger
right?
Man, right? And
that's it. Like the production at 5-on-5, the 17 goals to his credit this year, like. I think the fact that they were able to make that move and they gave up, I get a higher draft pick and Zach Ostapchuk and Noah Gregor, but you added offense and they found a way to do it with the amount of money they had.
They had to find somebody who could punch in a little extra, right? And I'm curious, you've now had a chance to talk to Dylan Cozens a couple times since he has arrived as part of that trade that saw Josh Norris going out the door. A lot was made, and rightfully so, of the relationship that Norris had with some of the key pieces, certainly with the captain there, Brady Tkachuk. But this was certainly a core that, maybe needed to be shaken up. I'm sure there was a certain amount of worry in the front office about, was that Josh Norris shoulder a bit of a ticking time bomb? We're willing to take on some risk in terms of whether Dylan Cozens ever returns to what he was 2 years ago. You've had a chance to speak to him a little bit. How do you feel like he's adjusting and how he took the trade to Ottawa?
Like, it's kind of wild that like he hasn't been a Senator for a week yet. I know what I'm about to say. I've kind of written about it before, but like it's barely been a week.
Yeah.
And like he's fitting really well alongside Batherson. He's fitting really well on a power play unit, working in that bumper spot. And this guy still has to settle in a little bit more just with his living arrangement. I actually don't know who he's moved in with. I know everyone knows Zetterlund moved in with Stützle, but I think the fact that Cozens has kind of hit the ground running, that's great news for Ottawa. But I think a lot of that has to do with leaving a situation like Buffalo, where, just as a side note here, like I feel for the fans over there.
Yeah,
that's an organization. That's a fan base that deserves to see a winning product.
Every year in the Stanley Cup final, when they release the U.S. ratings, it's always like Buffalo's like no worse than the third or fourth most. Like those fans care. Like
they love hockey. Yeah. They love their team,
and
they want to see their team do well. And I think for a guy like this Dylan Cozens, who, like, I remember going to him after, be like, man, like I'm sure, like, being in that market, like, you know, you kind of feel for those fans that don't get to see the success. And like, yeah, he knew he wanted to win there. I'm sure all those guys wanted to
take me into that for a second, because you had to sort of circle back to one of your tweets on Tuesday night that, you know, Dylan Cozens, you know, you had quoted him in one of your tweets that he really loved the reaction he'd got.
Yeah.
Was it Monday?
Yeah.
That, you know, that it was nice to be appreciated, nice to being cheered for. And it looked like there was some people who grabbed onto that as like he wasn't appreciated in Buffalo. That was not what he was saying.
That's not all what he was saying. I think what happens a lot sometimes, particularly on social media, we look at what someone says and we try to find the subtext. We try to find something underneath. And there were fans who quote tweeted what I had to say, and they all of a sudden thought that Dylan Cozens was throwing shots at them. Like, there were people in particular who were putting up a clip of a goal he had scored and how fans responded to him then.
Right.
And they're saying, like, wow, really? Like, you didn't think we showed you this love? Like, that's not true. Like, Dylan Cozens, I think, was just taken aback by how Sens fans latched onto him. And remember, like,
happy to be welcome.
Happy to be welcome. And in the midst of a playoff chase, something they haven't really experienced in 8 years, they're going to be super jacked that this guy who's getting plugged into their lineup has worked out so well. So I think Dylan, the way I heard him that night, dude was just really taken aback, like in a positive way, at how fans responded to him. And that was not a comment on Sabres fans.
It's hard in cold black and white text, right?
Yeah.
At the emotion of what he's saying. But
right.
He's just complimenting Ottawa, thanking Ottawa. He's not throwing bombs.
Well, it's funny you say, like, it's hard to take that in black and white, but, like, on the surface, black and white, you should be able to read it as, like, man, I've never experienced it, like, or like, this is awesome to experience something like this. Like, it's funny enough, like, it's actually funny. I look back at that media avail, and he said that quote, and immediately after that, he's like, that's like the craziest crowd I've ever played in. I didn't put that in, and I guess I didn't catch that in the moment before the tweet. That I could understand, like, fans being a little up in arms about a little bit. But
when
even
I
then,
saw
like,
that, I was going to go and look. I'm like, which World Juniors did he play in again? Like, I was going to go and see, was it a Canadian thing, or maybe it was a COVID thing where we didn't even have a crowd?
I think it was 2020, because I think he played with Quentin Byfield.
Okay. So
it was back around 2021, like one of those
I don't even remember where that was. But I was just curious, right? And look, that's me still reading too much into it. It's just him saying that was wild and that was fun, right?
That's
I'm glad to be here.
But that's it. Like, when I heard him talk about that, I didn't get a sense that guy didn't think about what the Sabres crowd was like and wasn't appreciative of that. I think he really liked being in that market and he wanted to win there.
Sure.
But like when you've gone through losing year after losing year after losing year, it saps through everybody. Yeah. And I think the fact that he gets to be in a spot where he's rejuvenated, obviously, because he's playing on a team that's trying to make the playoffs, like, I think anyone in that situation would feel different.
I've walked into a new room. They've embraced me. A new fan base. They've embraced me. That was a great win. Yeah. We are in the playoff race. Why wouldn't I be excited? That was awesome.
Dylan Cozens scored against the Red Wings, and Brady Tkachuk is like straddling him and just celebrating. Like, he did it. Like, he's happier than everybody. His best friend got traded, and he is happier than everybody that Dylan Cozens is producing offensively. Like, if any of those fans, whether you're a Sabres fan or a Senators fan, was going through what Dylan Cozens was going through, you'd react the same way.
Yes. What did you think of the deal, you know, as it came down, and having now seen it play out a little bit? Like, it looks like a very nice start to his Senators career. You know, was that a smart ad for the Sens? Did they give up too soon on Norris? You know, just in a general sense, what do you think of the trade itself?
I thought it was a good trade. Yeah. I thought, for like, if the trade had just been Cozens for Norris, I can understand you're looking at those players and you're picking up on certain similarities with how their careers have gone. And yes, there's the injury history for Norris, but also like the play going down for Cozens. Like, that's where there are some discrepancies. Sure. But like, ultimately, I thought if it was just going to be one-on-one for that, like, both teams are taking chances on guys who just need some stability and want to be healthy. When you add in some of the extra auxiliary pieces, like, You give a new home for JBD. You flip him for another depth defenseman who, look, JBD is a young player, and I hope for his sake he's able to latch on to a team, whether it's Buffalo or somewhere else, and he's able to get a little bit more playing time as a former first round pick, versus like having a guy like Dennis Gilbert who he's bounced around in different markets. I remember covering him in Calgary. Like, that's a guy you don't mind as your number 7 defenseman who can play in a pinch. And when you put him on the ice, he'll be physical, he'll be tough, and 100%. you'll count on him being as good defensively as he can be. For me, like, the second round pick in 2026 being added makes wild. This deal for me.
Yeah.
Like, really? Like, I hope there's a day where the Buffalo Sabres make the playoffs and they're competitive and they, like, Rasmus Dahlin is able to captain that team to some kind of success. I don't think that's happening as early as next year. So in my head, I'm thinking, damn, the Ottawa Senators are going to get like a high pick with that second round pick they got.
Like
and you get Dylan Cozens
overall.
Yeah,
like that,
and you get Dylan Cozens who seems to fit well on your team.
And it allows you to flip a second to go do the Zetterlund thing.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
and you clear cap space to accommodate some of that salary too. Like, that was a win for me going away for Steve Staios. Josh Norris, heck of a player, heck of a guy to talk to in that locker room. Has that shooting mentality. I get maybe not as much of a play driver as Dylan Cozens can be, but he can play
good in his own end too, like good stick,
good defensively, can play in all situations. I think Buffalo will like the guy that they will get, but I also get too with the injury history.
It would be hard
the money there. It's tough.
That not to be in your mind if you're Ottawa. Much like for Sens fans, for that front office, it would be in your head. Like, are we just waiting for the next injury? And maybe it'll never happen, and hopefully it doesn't. But it would be on your mind. Like, we could swap this guy out for a guy a year younger, slightly lower cap hit,
plays a center right shot position,
little more physical, shoots right.
Does a lot of things you want from a center of his quality. Like, I completely understand why a guy like Steve Staios would covet him as much as he did. Like, I think it was a deal that for Dylan Cozens having a change of scenery benefited him. I also think there's an opportunity for that for Josh Norris too, in the sense that, you know, in Ottawa obviously he was very valued, but I think with the injury history and just establishing himself, like, to be on another organization that wants to value him and also thinks he's a player worth keeping around, like,
they wanted to for change their group, right? And 100%. He's a guy who is well liked in the Ottawa room, so you can count on him walking in and having not ruffling any feathers when he gets to Buffalo.
Yeah,
brings all the things he can bring to way. Like, maybe that is a positive change for them if he stays healthy. That it doesn't speak anything wrong with Dylan Cozens, but he steps in. We change the vibe,
change the makeup of your team.
That's right,
absolutely. But also, I'll say this too. I think a trade like that had to happen for this core to go anywhere. And I thought in my head that if they were going to move on from a Josh Norris, it would be an offseason thing.
Yeah.
But also, who's to say they look at a Thomas Chabot, for example, and say, you know what, like, you had a good year. Let's see if we can cash in on that and make a move. I think for this team to have taken that next step, someone in that core was going to have to get flipped for a piece that was going to
when
make
I say
them better.
The Buffalo core had to be shaken up, the Ottawa one, like, just scraping by barely for your playoff life was not the high watermark. They wanted better than that. And so this has shaken it up, and I think it speaks well of this front office. And I don't think that it's that they targeted Norris for this reason, but the fact that they were willing to trade the captain's buddy speaks well of them. This is not good enough right now. We're going to make the hard moves that we have to make right now, and so far, it's worked out pretty nicely for them.
I think the fact that it's working as well as it has off the start is helpful for everybody, especially as Dylan gets himself acclimated, and obviously Fabian has to do the same thing too. And I mean, look, they've got a pretty busy week, so you don't have that much time for downtime and just to kind of mess around and just get to know everybody. You got to play these games and get acclimated with everybody. So I think for this team, the fact that it's worked out well, it's a good omen for them potentially.
Last thing before we wrap it up, I know we got to get you out of here, but the most recent episode of the Chris Johnston Show, you guys were talking an awful lot about Mitch Marner.
We did.
I am incapable of doing one of these episodes without talking a little Leafs.
That's okay.
I understand that.
I get it. People like to make it about the Leafs.
Of course we do, man. So as we sort of sit here now, and the conversation you had, I will link to it in the show notes. I'll direct people to the conversation that you and CJ had, which was really interesting about this Mitch Marner situation. I'm curious, since you have the privilege. That's the wrong word. You have the ability that I don't have to watch this from a little bit of a distance.
Sure.
Be a little emotionally separated from it.
Yeah.
When you look at the fact that they went and asked Mitch Marner, would you accept a trade in a Rantanen situation and go to Carolina? He turns it down. There's a bit of a blow up over the weekend. It seems to be subsiding, but the Mitch Marner thing, honestly, most of the season has been pretty quiet for what it is, right? A pending UFA who's capable of getting 100 points. One of the, we can argue it, top 10, 15, 20, 25 players in the league. It's been reasonably quiet, and yet it's now back in the ether. It's sort of being talked about again in a way that it wasn't. From your position, having the conversation with CJ, talking to the people that you talk to, and just your own perspective, looking at this from a bit of a distance, do you think ultimately, as the Leafs go down the stretch and into the playoffs, the fact that they had that conversation is likely to be a net negative that suddenly has them dealing with conversations they weren't dealing with before, having things in the media that, or will this fade away? And Mitch always knew, to some degree, if I'm going to play out the year as a UFA in Toronto, at some point there will be a bit of a stir-up. Like, how do you sort of look at this and where he's at?
I don't know if this story could ever really go away. I mean, you talk about fading, it could only fade as far back as, like, the background.
Yeah.
And then once the playoff starts, like, it feels like that becomes a whole subplot.
The spotlight.
Right.
This is the whole thing. The Leafs, what they do doesn't matter till the playoffs.
100%.
Mitch, you're one of those guys who hasn't produced them.
He's the guy who hasn't produced in quite some time.
Yeah.
Like the reputation around him is that he shrinks in those moments. And you talk about the fact that this has been pretty quiet around him. Like, we all kind of knew about the possibility that he could be moved. And then obviously the proposed swap kind of inflames things. Mm-hmm. But he's been having a really good year.
Yes.
Like, in spite of whatever pressure may be set on him, or maybe he just found a way to tune that out. At the beginning of the year, he was like, hey, I'm not going to talk about my contract situation, and he was just going to play. And he found a way to get some success out of it. In the playoffs, I'm very curious how that plays out, because depending on how he plays in the playoffs, that impacts whether or not he stay. I mean, I think in a roundabout way, it could impact what he wants to do and how much money he should be afforded to, and not just from the Toronto Maple Leafs. If Mitch Marner has a playoff series to forget for the Toronto Maple Leafs,
they flame out in round one. He's got 3 points, and
like if you're the Toronto Maple Leafs, you have a lot of hard conversations to consider. But also, if you're Mitch Marner and you hit the open market, what are you getting on that open market? I mean, he could still stand to make a ton of money, but I wonder how much that plays into it, right? I hate to do this to you, but I feel confident in saying that because I did make the prediction on the Coburg episode. Mm-hmm. I still think this ends with Marner testing free agency and going somewhere else. But I could totally see a situation where Marner and the Leafs sit down. They say, you know what? All I've wanted to do was just be a Toronto Maple Leaf. Let's just find a deal that makes sense, and I stick around for the next 8 years. Like, there's a world where that happens, but like, I also think for Marner too, like, to be in a position where he could be the guy on the market, for him to be,
and he is now. Yeah, Rantanen signed up.
That's it.
You're the guy this summer. You are the belle of the ball,
and you could. And look, if you're Chicago
is exactly the team I'm looking at.
And you're like, damn, we need to find.
I'm not worried about your playoff production. I'm worried about getting to the playoffs.
Yeah, like, and look, you need guys who get you to the playoffs and through the playoffs. And Mitch Marner in the regular season,
he's into the playoffs.
He can get you to the playoffs for sure.
Yeah.
And you know who would love playing with a guy like Mitch Marner? Connor Bedard.
Yeah.
So I have Chicago
someone to be that defensive conscience for you. That is a fit made in heaven.
If Marner leaves the Toronto Maple Leafs, Chicago is my number one destination because of the cap space they'll be able to afford, the opportunity that's there for him, and I just think him and Bedard being able to play with each other, like, that could produce some really fun fireworks there.
And they got tons of cap space.
They have tons of it. They could literally pay Marner whatever he would want.
14.5 if they want to.
You back up the Brinks truck
but it's
for Mitch Marner if you're
exploding. They could do it.
You could do it for Mitch Marner if you please.
Yep.
But I still think there definitely could be a world, obviously, where he could change his mind and say, you know what?
To me, it's no worse than 50-50.
Yeah, it's fine, and that's okay. I think look, we make a big deal. Fans make a big deal about players asking for the whole set of money they asked for, and think of the little guy, and think of your team, whatever. Nah, man. Like, if you're a player, go for what you think you're worth.
Get the bag.
Get the bag. Get paid. I'm never gonna get mad at a player asking to get paid. And for a guy like Mitch Marner, in spite of his lack of playoff success, if he feels he's worth a certain amount of money and someone's willing to give it to him, you gotta at least see if you could do that. So I think
once you've come this far, you might as well at least check in on July 1, see what everybody else is.
I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah, and even if your play is then to turn around to Toronto and go, look, Chicago's giving me 14.
Like, what are you guys doing?
What do you got? Yeah, I got to at least check. Yeah.
So I think with Marner, like, there's no way this doesn't become a story, and I think in the playoffs it will reemerge as a subplot. And then I think if he goes through a postseason where he's not a factor, I wonder how other GMs view that going forward. Like, do you want a guy whose reputation of shrinking the playoffs just persists? But that's if that happens, because there's a world where Mitch Marner continues his great regular season
Mitch
to
Marner
this point.
Has been their best player this year. Matthews is not performing.
Yeah.
Clearly he's hurt to
Still
some
laboring.
degree. Yeah.
If Marner picks up that slack and continues that on into the playoffs, I mean, if you're the Leafs, you're like, do you let that guy go? He holds all the cards, and yeah, man, he's just going to play this out into July, I think.
I don't disagree with you. Which is a bummer over here. So
I mean,
this stress is not going away anytime soon.
Look, man, like, you got to look.
I at least had this. Well, if Mitch leaves, maybe we have a shot at getting Ranton. And like, nope, you don't anymore. No safety net now, Matt. Like,
yeah, that's true, man. I don't know. I still think.
What's Nick Ehlers doing?
Oh man,
on, buddy. Come
poor
on,
Nick Ehlers, man, getting pressed into service there. So yeah, my official prediction is that he joins Chicago, but if he stays in Toronto, I will not be surprised.
Okay. Julian McKenzie from The Athletic and the Chris Johnston Show, man. I can't tell you how much I appreciate you making a little more time for us. And
thanks so much for having me, man.
No doubt we'll come knocking again, buddy.
Yeah, man. Let me know.
As soon as Lent's over.
You mean when the playoffs start?
Yeah. Yeah, we'll do that. Especially, man, we may be staring down Toronto, Ottawa. Like, that could be a thing.
And if we get to that point where, we got to do this again around the playoffs, we might have to do that over Zoom. We'll have to do that over Zoom.
Yeah.
Gotta make sure my setup's good.
I'll be third string, fourth string at that point. See, Julian's going to have a lot going on, man.
Oh, God.
Thank you so much for coming in, buddy.
Thanks so much for having me, man.
We will wrap it up here. Next week, I can tell you, on top of the usual appearance from your buddy Rob on Monday morning, we're going to talk to Nick Ashbourne from Sportsnet and the Blue Jays Happy Hour podcast. We'll talk, no doubt, some spring training Blue Jays, and he's got a bit of an ear to the ground as well. I know you all want to hear more Leaf talk, and he's on top of a bit of that. So that'll be Nick Ashbourne next week. Lots of good stuff coming up. Thanks, buddy.
Please tell Nick Ashbourne I say hi.
I will do that.
Big fan of his from our Yahoo days together.
Okay.
Big fan of Nick.
I will do that. I'll look at this, man. We're reuniting people.
Yeah, no, man. Nick Ashbourne was on Zone Time the last days of the podcast I had at
he's fantastic.
Yahoo. He's great. He's awesome.
Yeah.
It's awesome that he's been able to reinvent himself as a Leafs guy. He was a baseball guy for a while. So
and that's it. We'll talk some Jays with him too. He co-hosts with
awesome.
our buddy Andrew Stote in the Blue Jays Happy Hour podcast. So Nick can do it all. Right?
Yeah, he's super talented. Yeah. So shout out to Nick Ashbourne.
Sounds good. We absolutely believe that. Look forward to it next week. For Julian, my name is Matt, and we will see you all on the next one.
I've got nothing here. You're giving me baseball and hockey, and I got my keister blowing in the wind. That made to look like a fool here. That's just dumb. I don't want anything to do with this place. This place is run by a bunch of children.